Hi, I'm Lindsay Juergens, and this is Leaders Like Us. Thank you to JBS for being our series sponsor. Today we have Angie Dowd, the owner of the Chocolate Bar. Angie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I am so appreciative you made time. I know you have got to have so much going on running the Chocolate Bar.
We do.
Yeah.
It's great.
I've got several questions for you just rolling around in my head right now, but before we get into the now, can you give us some background? You come from the Dresbach family, so can you give us some Angie background?
Yeah. Like you said, I grew up in the restaurant business with Dresbachs. My grandfather bought our own Dresbachs since 1944, and then my father took it over in 1980 from my grandfather, and my Aunt Mary Jo had it as well. They were brother and sister running the place. And so it was just, it was a great time to grow up for me. It's just second nature to me. But I went off to college, originally went to go to be a teacher and coach, because that's all I wanted to do was coach. And my life just went a different direction, went to Los Angeles and wanted to be an actor or singer or whatever.
Oh, wow.
You know,
yeah.
just be in the entertainment industry. And then, I just realized it wasn't a life I wanted to live. And one day I went and hiked Machu Picchu, and I was so interested in archaeology. So I went back to school, got my degree in anthropology out at Cal State Northridge.
Oh, wow.
But in the meantime, I was doing gourmet food and wine and cheese, and always in restaurant business the entire time I was out there. So it's always kind of been a second skin for me.
Yeah.
And then from there, I came, had this roommate that was a chef, and he kept wanting me to make Dresbach's food for him. So I would make this food, and he would just be in awe of, how amazing this was. And so the blue cheese dressing was what I made for him one time. And he's like, you really need to do something with that.
Oh, goodness.
And so it just kind of snowballed from there that I started doing the Dresbach salad dressings and bottling them. And I researched, and I went through Nebraska Processing Center and did a lot of work with kind of putting those into jars and what the process it would be. And I started out selling them in LA, actually.
No way.
Yeah, and it went really well. But it was around Christmas time. It was around actually this time in 2009. And I had probably 20 cases that I was sitting there going, oh, I'm going home, I'm driving, I might as well get them into coolers and take them back and see if anybody wants to buy them. And so I went to a few stores, and they all they said no, they just didn't know, And so then I went to Hy-Vee, and the guy kind of gave me a chance and just said, like, yeah, let's try it and see what happens. I said, well, if you just put it out over the intercom, people will probably buy it. And he called me the next day, and he's like, I'm going to need more dressing.
Oh,
and I was like,
that's so cool.
Oh gosh, so I don't have any more. Like, I'm here for Christmas break.
I'm just driving through.
Yeah, just driving through. So then they put in like a 200 and some case order for as soon as I could possibly get it.
Because and you're living in LA at this time.
I'm living in LA at the time.
Oh my goodness.
So it was just a whole process of how do you transfer, or do you make it in Nebraska and then bring it, just deliver it to the store, which is what I ended up doing, is just having connections in Omaha and Grand Island that I could make it at, and do the processing and the manufacturing. And it is all handmade. It is still all handmade.
Wow.
Everything is still, the exact recipe of what we used in the restaurant. It's just put into jars.
Oh my goodness.
And so
impressive.
We just had to tweak a few things, but nothing with the recipes, just we had to test how long it would last and this and that. So that was really fun for me. Like, I really enjoyed, not the stress of going back and forth from California. That was a mess. But I just knew I needed to be here. And so it was an easy move for me to come back.
So what was that time frame from that, Thanksgiving-y season
Yeah.
that this happened to you moving back here?
It was about 8 months.
It was about 8
Yeah,
months.
yeah,
That's
it
pretty
was about
quick.
8 months. And in fact, I had just moved into a new apartment in LA
Oh my gosh.
when that happened. And I mean, my intention was always to move back, but as you get older, you're just who you are and what you believe, and everything else just changes. And when
Yeah.
I came back home, like knowing that I may only see my father or my mom 8 more times. If you only see him once a year, you might only see him 8 more times in your life,
Sure.
or something like that. It was kind of heartbreaking for me, and I just wanted to be here. And I know they always say there is no place, like Nebraska is nice, and there is no place like Nebraska, and it is actually true. I mean,
Yeah.
100% true.
Yeah.
It is just amazing, the community support. And I mean, I could give you a million different details of why I believe that, but it's just a fact.
That's
it
so
really
cool.
is. Yeah. It's just when you live in a place that is so lonely, but there's millions of people, and then you come back to a place that there's not a ton of people, but there is it's quality, So it was an
makes
easy move for
perfect
me.
sense.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
an easy move.
I think that the point you're making really resonates with me, and when I was younger. And it's interesting too, because I think that's so common for young people, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's such
Right.
a normal process to be
Absolutely.
I need this. I'm a big city girl, and that's
Yeah.
all I am, right? Deep
Yeah.
in my soul. Have I ever tried out? Not really. But we have this sense of needing to go explore. I think that's super healthy and
Yeah.
really necessary. And
I
if you
agree.
can go look around, you should go look around,
Yeah.
because I don't love the idea of either well, what if? What if I had gone and tried?
Right. Right.
So it's so cool that you had the opportunity to go sample the big city and be like, okay, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Heading back.
Yeah. I tell all of the young kids that work for me, people always ask me, why did nobody do anything with the Dresbach's restaurant? And I said, well, did you follow in the exact same footsteps as your parents? That's essentially what the business was
Sure.
a dream of my grandfather. My father got a degree in teaching and wanted to be a teacher. And he ended up coming back for a summer
Yeah.
to work for his dad, and was there for 40 years.
Wow.
And never got to do the things, in his life that he truly wanted to do. Don't get me wrong, he loved his life.
Sure.
And everybody has to make something better out of what they have. But that was not where his passion was at.
Right,
And I always
right.
think, could you imagine going through your life not ever finding the thing that you really wanted to do because you needed the stability of to support for your family and this
You're
and
just
that.
prioritizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was an easy, it is in our blood. It was an easy thing, but that always resonated with me because my dad did for my grandpa what I was going to start doing for my dad, and my dad was the one person that was always like, don't get into the restaurant business.
Wow.
You just, it's not a life that you want to be, always worried about. And so I think I fought that for a very long time.
Sure.
Just because he always said that, and then when I got that degree, and he was there at the graduation, and he said, now what do you have to do next? What are you going to do? Because you typically go on to get your master's and a PhD. And I was like, well, I think I'm going to go do something with Dresbach's.
Yeah.
Nuts, just forget it. So
Right.
it was pretty funny. But I always tell these young kids that work for me that it's not anybody else's life, it's yours. And if you don't
Preach.
find these paths for yourself, you're never going to be happy in the end with what you do. You
Yeah.
really just have to find your path. It is really your path.
It is.
And yeah, it might lead you back to running a restaurant someday, but it's about the journey that got you there.
Yeah.
It's about being able to say, well, I learned experience because I did this. I learned
Yep.
experience because I did this. And
That's
I learned
right.
experience because I did this. And then you come back and you realize that you are a better person because of
Absolutely.
it, that you can see life in a different way. And
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And you get to have your own victories, and I really value failure. So you get to have your own
Absolutely.
victories, you get to have your own failures without someone charting out your life or you following a charted out life you thought would be perfect.
Exactly.
I mean, my goodness, if I had $1 for every time I was thrown a curveball, I'm like, I didn't see that coming. You know,
Absolutely.
that's life. That's
Yeah.
just the experiences that add up to make us who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do always actually talk about that. Name a person in life who hasn't had a failure, you know, whether it's small, like I just talked to one of the senior high volleyball players that they lost, you know, or by 2 points it was.
Right.
But it's like, that's a loss. I can feel that for you because I used to play sports and it was a great leadership tool for me. But
Sure.
You're going to gain something from that loss. You know,
Yep.
you're going to learn something from it, whether it's super tiny or whether it's just a change in attitude on a different time in life. But
That's right.
you do always learn something, whether it's something, you know, quote unquote small, or if it's something big like a loss of a business or a loss of a family member
That's right.
or, you know, anything. I mean, you make choices, you got to learn from them, you know.
I sure hope so.
I know.
Yeah. No
I mean,
kidding.
that's what we do, right? Otherwise, I mean, I always say you have two choices when something really horrible happens, you know? It's like how you proceed moving forward.
It's 100% of it.
Yeah.
And you know, from a parent perspective, I think about that too, because that's always been something I want my kids to know is these are, it sounds kind of corny, but these are learning opportunities. When you find you need to switch gears because this wasn't working out,
Yeah.
it's actually really beneficial to know, like, oh, that didn't work out.
Yeah.
My plan A didn't work out. Okay,
It's
cool.
okay. There's a million
Now
other
you know.
plans. Yeah.
Well, speaking of, you know, you wanting to maybe stay away from the restaurant business and then surprise, I'm the owner of the chocolate bar.
Right.
There was a piece there that brought you back in, right?
Yeah.
So what did that look like?
So I continued doing the Dresbach's dressing, and then I started listening to so many people talk about Dresbach's food. This was in 2011, and I kind of got ahead of myself. But again, a huge learning experience is like I always said, if I would never do it, I would do it this way, and I never really gut listened to myself. Like, you know, when your gut is telling you don't do something,
Yeah.
and you do it anyways. I just rushed into doing a carry-out business, which was great because it was a learning experience, but it was not where my heart was at. And so after 3 years of doing that, I went back to just the dressings. But I had met the owners of the chocolate bar at the time, which was Sharina and Amos Anson. And they said, hey, we have this extra space. We could convert it into a manufacturing area for you downtown. And I was like, oh, I'd love to be downtown, you know, even though then, this was 2014, it was still developing down. I mean, it's always been developing, but it was
But it was
still-
earlier in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was great. I loved it. I loved the building. I loved the people. I loved the feeling and the warmth of going in there, even though I just would go in the back door
Right.
and have my little area. It was wonderful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a breath of fresh air for me from the restaurant that I was doing plus the dressings. It just
Right.
really felt right. And so I did that in the building, and I still do since 2014. So when they sold it to Liz and Perry Schutz that had it prior to me, and then COVID, and poor Liz and Perry, like, you know, talk about horrible run of bad luck. Is that
timing
you
was
buy it
rough.
right before 2020,
Right.
and then have to go through that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's just, I mean, I felt bad for people who were seasoned restaurant owners.
Sure.
Let alone a young couple with a child and coming into this huge building with coffee shop mentality, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, just a
Yeah.
hard thing to take over. So anyways, when the opportunity came, like, they asked me and I said, absolutely not. I was like, no,
Right.
I'm not getting
No.
back into the restaurant business. But they kept kind of talking to me about it.
Right.
And I kept thinking, then they would talk about what, they are looking at doing, which was selling it to basically people that were going to shut down the chocolate bar. And just have it as
Really?
like
Wow.
have it as like a catering event space, or break it up into 2 different places. I mean, there were so many things, and I thought, this is not a good thing for downtown Grand Island. Like, it's
Right.
just to not have the chocolate bar and have this beautiful building open
Yeah.
to the public. It was hard for me to fathom that. But the biggest thing is I loved the employees that worked there. And so I thought, well, what are they going to do,
Yeah.
And of course, there's a lot of jobs out there for really good hard workers, but to me, it just seems like a waste
Yeah.
to like have all these people trained and loved in this environment to just let them go.
Yeah, definitely.
And such a great building and everything else. So
Yeah.
that's how the decision became. But it was not an easy decision
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
Like
So
it-
many things to consider. I mean,
so much.
no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, my
Yeah.
husband and I probably asked every single person on the street I could talk to about good and bad, decisions of
Yeah.
businesses. And
Yeah.
I wanted every perspective,
Oh, I'm sure.
every single perspective I could possibly think of, but what it really came down to is I told myself, if you do this, you are married to it. You are the person that it's you,
Right.
This is nobody else. It's yours. You're going to be there nonstop,
Yeah.
and you know what that is.
Yeah.
And I sat there and thought, yeah, I can do that. Like, I can do that. Like, I want to, I just need to find somebody to help run Dresbach's
Sure.
and manufacture, and somebody I trust. And I found that, found a person
It's awesome.
and a team that works with that. And then, just the rest of it, I knew what it, is just a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
And a lot of just being there and trying to count on other people.
Yeah.
So,
I love that you prioritize the people. I hear that, and I see that when I'm in the chocolate bar every 45 minutes of my life.
I know, I love you.
But I can see that the people matter to you.
Yeah.
And from a leadership perspective, I think that that's just the most valuable thing. When people know that their boss cares.
Yeah.
You can't really teach that. That either is or it isn't. So
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That's my dad, and I mean, I never got to work with my grandpa, but my dad was always about the employees.
sure.
And it was, so that always was with me, is that, look, especially as time went on for Dresbach's, as time went on, there were so many more options for people to work, Back then, for like a woman to work in a restaurant and earn that kind of money, that was they were pulling in probably more money than their husbands,
Right,
as a waitress or a bartender at Dresbach's.
Right.
But as time went on, more and more restaurants, there's, money is split off in different ways.
Yeah, just competition.
Right, competition. And so, but we had people that worked there for 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying 1 or 2 people. There was like 15 people I could name that
wild.
were there for that long. And just, family always does come first. You're never going to compete with that, you know. And that's what my people that work for me know, the same. Like, family always will come first. If you have an emergency in your family, we'll figure it out.
Right.
And if the customers don't understand, it is just what it is.
Right.
So, that's always one of the things that I think COVID did do, was that kind of prioritized some people's thinking, I mean, whether you believe one way or the other, or whatever the whole thing is with it, it did kind of do a reset in people's mind on, what is, when you walk into a restaurant, are you going to sit there and get mad that the water glass is put in a different spot than where it usually is,
Sure.
And I
Yeah.
think that's where the mind kind of changed. People are just like, oh, we're just happy you're here.
Yeah, we're just happy you're here is totally right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, so, that's I love the people that work for me. Everybody brings something to the table.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where you got to look at it,
That's great.
is that not everybody's isn't made up the same. I mean, we all look
No.
at children and it's like the learning disabilities and the problems and the mental, physical, mental aspects of all of our children versus, I mean, having employees with the same issues, but they also have children with the same issues.
Certainly.
It's not this isn't their
No.
priority in their mind,
I think it's a pretty outdated perspective to have. And unfortunately, I don't feel like I see a lot of it anymore, but it's a pretty outdated perspective to have for people to think that when you come to work, you're just now this employee.
Right.
You're no longer a parent or a sister or a father, or a son. It's so silly to even honestly think about that, because when something is heavy on our heart, that's there. You're walking around with it, right? So
Absolutely.
to just have respect for that. I mean, obviously we need staff to do their jobs, right?
Right.
But to recognize that these are human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Angie.
I appreciate that.
Well, Angie, looking forward at the chocolate bar, what do you want to see, or what are some things on the horizon that you would like people to know about?
Well, there's a lot of things that we are always moving forward with, and it almost seems like a daily occurrence that we're like, let's do this instead. I mean, a lot of people comment on our Facebook posts or Instagram posts, like how the food, I just like the ever-changing. I like the seasonal food. I like, today the pomegranates are amazing. Like, let's do something with pomegranates.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I would love to marry together the chocolate bar and Dresbach's. Like, I think that Dresbach's is an old restaurant that is like a pillar of Grand Island since 1932, and chocolate bar is kind of the new age pillar, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Like
it
the
does.
regentrification of downtown, and the chocolate bar and the chicken coop were like there,
Right.
And I'm sure I'm missing others, I'm sorry. But I like the idea that they can combine together and
Yeah.
create something amazing.
That
So,
sounds great.
yeah, we'll do some of the old favorites from Dresbach's, and
Yeah.
of course keep the favorites of the chocolate bar and the
Sure.
integrity of both restaurants, and just have fun with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there really is room for both to coexist in the same space. That's some
Absolutely.
creative thinking, actually. I love that.
Yeah,
Very cool.
I like the thought of it, because
Yeah.
a lot of times people don't want to be categorized into what their parents did, right? They want to do their own, and they want to like create something, but still have the honor of both type of restaurants. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of where I see it going.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
I love the idea.
Me too. Well,
Awesome.
it's just about getting moving forward and
Yeah.
getting all of the kitchen done, and
Right.
it's a big project.
That would be a lot
and-
to figure out.
Yep.
No doubt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gotta go get all that taken care of. So
Well,
work on
like we
that.
were talking about, no matter what, you lay that path and everything's just going to work out exactly as you planned, and you won't have to change anything ever, right?
right. never go off course.
Never have to deal with a plan B.
Right,
It's just
right.
ideal. So-
Exactly.
Well, Angie, thank you again for joining me today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank
Yes.
you.
Oh my gosh, I've loved hearing about all the things I didn't know. I didn't want to ask you too many questions in advance, because I wanted to sit here and learn about you, and you've checked all the boxes. So thank
Well,
you so
good.
much.
I'm glad.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, Angie Dowd, thank you for joining us from the Chocolate Bar. Again, this is Leaders Like Us. I'm Lindsay Juergens, and thank you to our series sponsor, JBS.